Hello, this is Lauren Hubele here with another Gemmo Voices. I'm here with my good friend and colleague, Dee Webster. Dee is in Camden, Maine. And Dee, today we're going to be talking about Gemmos and working with the aging process.
Yes, yes, delightful to be with you as always. And it's a great topic. It's a great topic because of how supportive Gemmos are right up through. So
Dee, I have to laugh because I remember this very clearly, but you may not. Back in my early days, and for folks listening, Dee has been collaborating with me now probably over 10 years
oh, wow.
easily and helping create these Gemmo systems that we
Mm.
can make so accessible today. But I remember on a very early talk I was giving, and at the end, you said, "Hey, this is really great. You have all this stuff for babies and children and mothers, but what about folks that are aging?" And I was like, "What?" And of course, the aging process hadn't hit me yet. So,
It seems to have taken off from there, though.
yes, it has.
But
It
we've
really
swept
has.
that age in well.
Well, thank you. That's good. And Dee, this brings back memories of all that you brought to this work when we were doing our Gemmo labs and showing up and testing all those extracts for the nervous system.
I loved it. It was great because it's such a great way to learn about gemmos. Like when we were doing provings of all the nervous system gemmos, and we take one and just take it by itself for a few days in a row and just get that felt sense of it. It's such a great way to understand it. And I still actually encourage, my patients to do the same.
Yeah, well, I think I love that you said that. And I think that's the only way we can build
Mhm.
relationships with these. We can read
Yeah,
about them or
exactly.
someone can tell about them, but until you feel that shift, you won't remember it.
And they're lovely because they're so subtle that you just have to pause and then realize, oh, I had been feeling off. Now I'm feeling much better and things are flowing. And just that kind of conscious connection to, what is happening, what's shifted. And so it's really a fun way to learn them.
Yeah, and to you as you were saying that, I was remembering when you were in one of my early groups and we were just getting to know each other. At some point, you shared this that Gemmos act like a portal, and I was like, yes, yes, we think alike on that topic.
Yes, yes, they're wonderful. Because they provide openings that everyone is seeking. And I think I'm thinking mostly about the nervous system gemmos at this
Yeah,
moment
yeah,
because they are so direct in being able to do that. They provide those openings. And it's actually where my background's homeopathy, it's what we're looking for with homeopathy. But these are almost immediate most of the time, particularly the nervous system ones. If I'm feeling off or someone's feeling off, you can take it and it'll just turn it around immediately. So they provide a beautiful opening in another way, though, because when we look at health, I see it as what we want to do is align more with our true essence. And then
mhm.
what we have going on is a lot of conditioning, a lot of layers, the tensions that the body carries. So the gemmos provide this opening that you can see again and feel into more of our true self. So it's really lovely. It's what they do in such a gentle, yet poignant way.
And it comes in layers, doesn't it, Dee?
Mm.
Because I think now I probably haven't missed a handful of days in the last 12 years of taking Gemmos. And this morning I was headed out the door and I could feel my heart racing and I had too many things to do in a short amount of time. And I just stopped and thought, let me go take a drop of Hawthorn before I head out. And I still, after all these years, I had a whole different experience with it than I have in the past of this softening and strengthening at a layer that maybe hadn't been touched yet.
I know just what you mean. I have a favorite one that I reach out in those circumstances, which is Olive. And
Oh, yeah.
we'll do the same thing. It will just, when particularly in those circumstances when I have lots of balls in the air, trying to keep them up in the air, and it
Yeah.
feels a little bit stressed with the amount, that will just go in and smooth it. And then, it all flows as far as that's concerned. But it's like you're saying, there can be different experiences over time, even with that Gemmo and different openings. And I like to think of it in terms of us building on ourselves no matter what age. And I almost feel like, particularly at this age and stage, because it's so rich for doing any of that inner work and opening up more to an expanded self as far as that level of aging. So the Gemmos are really lovely supports for all of that.
So that is why we're here to talk today. It's about that aging process and about the issues that are coming up. And so often we think of physical complaints. However, there's such a rich opportunity to get to know ourselves. Our lives hopefully aren't as cluttered and hectic as they have been. Yet we've also are arriving at a place with a lot of conditioning still in place, the conditioning and compensations that we took on to do all the things in our 40s and 50s.
Well, that's how I see it too, that, developmental stage of where we are is about opening to, the expanded our essence. That's right where we are meant to be. And I feel like if not, life pushes us,
Yeah.
encourages all of that, with us.
Yeah. So Dee, talk to me a little bit about how you've integrated Gemmos in your practice in general, and then we can go into more specifically with folks of a more mature age.
So now with the Gemmos, what I do is start everyone on the Gemmos. I actually prefer that they be on Gemmos for at least a couple of weeks, and then I'll give them a homeopathic remedy. And the reason for that is that it opens the body in a number of ways. Some of it's elimination, but some of it's just alignment. And where it detox and rebuilds, it's amazing in what it can do. And then what I find is that a remedy will work that much better. If I give a remedy first, I think most people that have worked with homeopathy have that experience where it will ping pong around a bit. So
Yeah.
it pauses with that. It gives it a cleaner route. And it's not just homeopathy. That just happens to be one of the other modalities that I use. But anything else, if people are doing acupuncture, anything else, it works that much better. So that's why I love now using Gemmos, and they can be standalones for acutes, for chronics also, but they blend beautifully with others, but in that order. So they have a really important place in my practice at this point.
And are you mostly starting someone with a nervous system extract?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, if I always check elimination on the physical level because
Mm.
there's so much detoxing in the world that we live that we need to do. But the nervous system is key. That's we have to have our nervous system settled in order for the rest of our body to function, in order for all the metabolic functioning to happen, in order to have our life. I mean, if we just think about it, if we're really revved up and overloaded, functioning doesn't happen very well. It's very chaotic. But as soon as we can come back into just bringing it down a couple of notches, then we can handle whatever arises and we can move along with it. So it's so important. I mean, it's the first start of our human existence, our human development as a baby. That's where it starts. It's the bridge over to with essence as far as that. So it's so important and just beautiful with how if you work on that nervous system, you can open up to healing in whatever, wherever you're moving from there so much more efficiently.
Yeah. And team, what are you listening for with your conversations with your clients to choose a nervous system extract?
Um, Mostly where they are with on a mental emotional level. I mean, how much they're feeling stressed, of course, and perceiving life and handling life. But partly what I'm looking for is, are they working with a lot of anxiety, and what's the flavor of that anxiety? Are they working with depression? Is it a deeper layer? I always use that hierarchy of symptoms, that
Mm.
we have mental, emotional, physical symptoms all in a hierarchy. So a deeper layer is going to be on that level. Are they having some brain, if it's working with certain, well, with anyone, are they having some brain misses or whatever? That's an even deeper aspect that's going to affect that. So I'm just listening to how any of those symptoms are being expressed. And then from there, can match it up to the gemmos that will serve it. Some of that expression too, on that hierarchy, it could be coming out sideways in anger, frustration or whatever. So that's going to be another collection of gemmos. So
Yeah. So, do you have a particular story or two you'd like to share from your practice?
yes. Let me see. One woman that I'm thinking of, she's well in her 80s, and she has a lot of vitality with life. And sometimes what can come up when things get really stressed is her anxiety can come in and just overwhelm. And, that's not uncommon for a lot of people. But for her, I'm thinking of one time where she was having lots of anxiety. She was having some family dynamics. She's a hard worker. She was feeling overloaded with the amount of work. It was affecting things cognitively. She also happened to hit her head right about then.
Goodness.
And she, to the point where it had bled. So there was some, mix of things going on. And it was to the point was where it was affecting her sleep. So one of the beautiful remedies that I feel like anyone 60 on could be using periodically is silver birch seed. And
Mm.
it's just great for cognitive clarity, for detoxing, for memory, for any type of, working on things where there's weakness in that area. But we're, just with moving ahead, I think with our brain functioning, just to sidetrack for a sec, that's helpful for everyone, I feel like nowadays. So to do some, a bit of dosing with that. So I gave that to her with lime to help with the anxiety and settle her nervous system. And then I gave her hazel for sleep. It's such a sweet remedy. It's a wonderful one for the lungs also. So think of it, with these winter illnesses, but for a lot of people that have difficulty settling the system enough to go to sleep. And it was she just had such a beautiful response to that. It was like
Nice.
the elixir that helped her to align back with herself. And it just improved everything. It improved her energy and her clarity. But it also improved her outlook with life. And she has such a beautiful way of stepping back into that joy of life and just
Mm.
being so excited about where life was for her and the deepening of life. And so, and her sleep improved also. So that was a
Yeah,
really lovely
lovely.
combo. And it's like trying to use, a collection of gemmos. I usually don't use more than four, but using a collection that will help support in different ways when you were asking how I match it. It's like just seeing all these different parameters and, aspects and challenges that they're trying to meet. So,
Well, I particularly love that pairing of silver birch seed and silver lime because, and I also like the idea of kind of pulsing in silver birch seed because silver birch seed it's like vitamins for the brain. I mean, it
yes.
truly is. It's nutrition for the brain. It's feeding the brain function, and we all need that.
Yes.
And because it's a tonic, I think if it's taken for too long, sometimes it can feel a little pushy
Mhm.
to some folks. But I imagine that might be counterbalanced by the silver lime and that helping reconnect. So that food for the brain, the reconnection with self. No wonder why she came out of that in such a good spirit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
lovely
lovely.
to see.
Yeah. Anything else?
Well, I another use of gemmos that I was thinking about too is that for some people, they're really stepping into some challenges around cancer and chemo treatments. And I was recalling a situation with a woman who had a very aggressive tumor. And they were giving her a really unusual and high amount of chemo that she had to navigate. And in that circumstance, walking through all of that, it was a fairly long amount of time that she was in treatment. It meant keeping an eye on it and monitoring and changing as we went. But an example of gemmos that I did give at one point was, for example, using sea buckthorn and mistletoe, um, and then using some juniper and black currant and then hazel at night. Now, I just said I used four, but in that circumstance, because of the
Yeah.
intensity of what she was going through and the amount of support she needed, I wanted to up it a little bit more. And the juniper is beautiful for helping with working anytime with chemo, as far as such a lovely liver support. And then having black currant, I mean, her energy was hit hard with all of that. And you can imagine the inflammation going on. It's so, anytime with inflammation, black currant's the go-to.
Yeah, of
Inflammation on the
course.
skin, in the body, out of the body, it's the main one to think of. And because of the hit she was getting, she definitely needed some immune boosting. And then mistletoe is just beautiful to work with for cancer. So there's these deep supports for the nervous system because this was such an impactive process to go through, diagnosis to get, as it often is. And so the nervous system was well supported with all of this. And like I say, we did change protocols as we went, but in the end, she did really well with it all. I mean, there was ups and downs and things we had to tackle, but she did well enough in it that the hospital staff was commented that they couldn't believe how well she did, and they just hadn't seen that and didn't expect it. So it's just another example of where these beautiful little gemmos can step in and provide really potent support for all sorts of conditions, a whole range of conditions.
Well, I'm so glad you shared that because that's a question we're often asked. Folks will say, "Gee, should I just wait until after I finish my chemo or after I've had my therapy?" And that is my response as well. I'm so glad that you explained that because the more we can support the body as we're going through, the more effective the treatment is, and we retain our sense of self and our energy as
Mhm.
much as possible. Yeah. And
And
Dee, I actually though, I'd like to talk about that a little bit because so often there's a disconnect folks experience when going through chemo. I mean, that's exactly what's happening, right? It's deadening that connection too with self. Have you found Gemmos to be helpful for that?
I do, in the sense that I think anything that can help support the liver just on a physical level will help with reconnecting and going through all that. But it's such an emotionally charged time that the gemmos are just such a wonderful support for the nervous system, for the emotional states, for the almost, for sometimes it's the trauma of the diagnosis, of getting that and the abrupt change that it brings into our life. But I also, along those lines, feel like anytime we have an illness, it could be, we're down for the flu or that we have a cancer diagnosis, that they're actually openings. And speaking of portals, they're openings into a potentiality there that can bring us to a different level of health and a different level of understanding ourselves. And so they're there, they're extremely difficult to go through, but to frame it in a way of, okay, how is life trying to move me? And in doing that, the gemmos can be there to help support whatever's going on, whether it's the anxiety, meeting the anxiety, so that can calm enough to hear what's trying to come through, or maybe it's the grief or loss, or with cancer, sometimes there's old griefs that are there that are held in the body. The
Oh,
body's doing the
yeah.
best it can, but there can be beautiful remedies like hawthorn or, something like that that can help open up into and relieve, some of the old pains that we're carrying. And so it can be very potent in healing in a number of different directions.
So when we are faced with this challenge to to be able to best use it for our growth, Gemmos can act as bumper guards, more or less, to
Yeah.
hold us and guide us through the process.
Yeah. I feel like they are beautiful in that way, and they tone down the way, some of the internal voices, the inner critic,
Mm,
ego,
yeah,
whatever people
yeah,
label it, that can
yeah,
be pushing a little hard in there. They
yeah,
tone that down so we can actually hear more of our own true voice. We can listen to our
yeah.
gut and what our gut is saying, or we can hear an intuitive hit that comes through sometimes a little more subtly, but it's there to help. So it helps open us to more true guidance. That the gemmos can open a pathway for us to hear clearer, truer ways to move forward with our life.
Yeah. And that is the path of healing, right? To hear our
Yes,
own voice and respond.
yes,
Yeah,
yes. Yeah.
yeah. Dee, what else would you like to share while we have time today?
Well, another interesting piece that, speaking of all of this in the nervous system, that I've been looking at is we
Um,
are now living in a time where we're seeing a lot of Parkinson's.
mm,
And it's been fascinating to study that and get a better understanding of what's going on. And one of the people that have has, I think, a beautiful way. She's done a lot of really helpful work for people. Is Janet Hadlock's work, and she's an acupuncturist. And she took a look at the nervous system, and we're very familiar nowadays with polyvagal theory, with our parasympathetic, sympathetic, dorsal structure. And in it, we normally have in our sympathetic system fight, fight, or freeze. That part, the freeze, when we go into freeze, we open up after we move out of that. Her
mm,
whole theory with Parkinson's is that there was an initial trauma that put people in a whole other nervous system state. It could be an injury that happened that put people out of their body or said, I'm not going to feel this. Or it could be an emotional, mental trauma from childhood that put them in that state. And they went into a freeze state. And her picture of this is that shaking, the tremors that come with later stage Parkinson's, as many symptoms earlier on, but the later stage is the same as what we go through when we've gone through, say, an accident or some type of
mm.
trauma like that, and then our body is coming back to balance. So when it's doing that, it's a reset for the body. That's what it's trying to do, and it's finally having a chance to come out of it. And what happens usually when someone's in that frozen state, according to her perspective, is that they'll stay in that, have a norepinephrine override for their whole life until they hit the everything slowing down, and then that override finally stops in retirement and it comes through. And the tie-in with that has to do with safety. It's all about being safe in the body. And that's what made me think of it was you have this beautiful list of the central nervous system gemmos right on your chart of safety issues. And it's just another example where gemmos can fit in. I'm just beginning to work with all of this. But I think, interestingly enough, just seeing that as like another state of the nervous system and hearing where people, even without that condition, can get frozen. It's like that correlation of, what can we do to help, not just with anxiety or depression, but how about that, that frozen fear state, the feeling of safety, the feeling
Yeah,
of safety. And that's such a common thing when we think about it.
right. And the more those symptoms progress, the less safe one feels in their
Yeah.
body. And so it becomes this self-perpetuating
Yes.
cycle, correct?
Yeah.
Wow. And
It's a
so it's
very,
like, go
sorry.
ahead.
Well, it's a very interesting state because a lot of these people actually become very good at crisis management. They can carry a lot on their plate because they stay in a hypervigilant state. So that I find it fascinating the way the body compensates and is always trying to move us in a way that, to help. But on the other hand, what does truly align us with health?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
our system being settled in that parasympathetic level where we feel aligned, relaxed, resting in a deeper ease, see the larger picture,
Yeah,
and the
that's
Gemmos can help.
yeah, that and that's going to impact no matter what the diagnosis is, right? Is learning what that feels like. And my experience has been so few people know what that experience is, to feel completely safe and
Yes,
present.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wonderful. Dee, I am so delighted to have this time with you and for you to share some of your insight from your practice. I always love the way you think and the way that you resolve and dive in deeper into these different areas. Thank you.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here and share, and also so appreciative of the work that you brought because you brought this to this country in this form. And I just look at the years, I mean, all the years that we've had and how much it's blossomed and brought to other people. So I'm very grateful for that and
Well,
all
thank
that you have
you.
brought.
Thanks, Dee. Thanks for your time today.
You're welcome.